I'm going to talk about a simple instructional practice that can transform the classroom and create equity for all students. It is the explicit use of language objectives in lesson planning and implementation. You might wonder, how is this a social justice issue? But I believe that creating equity and educational access to all students is a strong social justice issue to be addressed. We all learn language through the 4 domains of speaking, reading, listening, and writing. This is important to understand because students express their knowledge through their language domains. Explicitly teaching students how to own the language objectives by posting them, stating them, referring to them throughout lessons helps them acquire skills through the medium of language. The typical classroom in the United States is designed to serve monolingual students, but that is not representative of the children in our classrooms. And there are now almost 5 million children in U.S. public schools who are learning English. Monolingual instruction practices do not meet all students' needs. Language objectives give students ownership of the grade level content. Ownership is access, and access is understanding. We want our students to understand the content. And the system that we work within the U.S. public school system is designed through an English-dominant lens, but students in U.S. classrooms are diverse, multilingual, and multicultural. Having a language objective encourages students to understand that there is a language expectation, and there are different ways to express themselves through the domains. So content objectives explain what the students will learn, and language objectives will explain how students learn through listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Posting learning targets or objectives is a common practice in the classroom, and typically they are posted on the board and not really referred to. Learning targets are meant for the students and should be owned by them. They are the anchor of the lesson. Explicitly teaching students which language domains they will use to learn the content helps them acquire the language and the skill. And without giving them this access, we actually linguistically oppress our students. This is an example of an international school in China. Students at this school are allowed to use Google Translate and write in their first language as well as the target language, which is English, to express their ideas. They learn what the content is, and the students will be able to, with a Bloom's taxonomy verb attached to it, and then they learn how they're going to access the content through one of the 4 language domains. When students own the language objective, their skills develop, as does their confidence, their community building, and their social skills. This is my Spanish immersion class from 2 years ago. These 3 students are 2nd and 3rd language learners, speaking English, Swahili, English and Korean, and Portuguese. They're able to stay in the target language because of explicit teaching of the content through the language objectives. You can see also in this 49-second video that they refer to the anchor chart on the wall from the lesson they learned, where they used their speaking domain to learn the shapes in Spanish and later use it in context in their center time.
¿Y qué son las figuras geométricas? Enséñale. ¿Qué son?
Este es rombo, este es cuadrado, trapezoide, hexágono, rombo.
Excelente.
Y
Y triángulo. Gracias por ser tan buenas amigas con Arthur, el nuevo amigo. Muy bien, chicas.
So putting it into practice, when you teach students from the beginning of the school year about the different language domains and how to access the content through them, they start to own the language objectives and understand more of the content. You can teach through that medium with supports for each domain, such as total physical response, sentence frames, explicit vocabulary lists, image, visuals, etc. And one example of planning through language objectives was following the protests after George Floyd's murder last spring. My kindergarten team planned a social-emotional lesson on how to talk about race with our multilingual students. The English teacher and I co-taught the lesson, which is called a bridging lesson, when we bring the English and the target language together, which in this case was Spanish, and so that the students could express themselves in either language. And we started out the lesson explaining that for this lesson they were going to learn through their speaking and their listening domains. Throughout the week of this lesson, we listened to stories in both languages about peaceful protest, and we offered them multiple opportunities to express their ideas through the different contexts of the texts. We talked about racism and what kids can do to stop it, and giving the students the language frames and modeling, repeating vocabulary terms from the text also helped to scaffold the lesson using the language domain as the anchor. Having started the practice of explicit language objective teaching from the beginning of the year allowed the students to understand the content and share. All students had a voice, and anchoring the lesson in the language objective allowed the students to express themselves in their language or circumlocute in the target language, which means using everything that they know in the target language to express themselves. It also increased student buy-in and engagement, and help students to understand perspectives and feel included in the learning without language barriers. So anchoring the lesson in the language objectives allowed the students to really express themselves. The planning of the language objectives provides teachers the opportunity to prepare the supports that are critical for students to attain the outcome. And students understand what they are striving to achieve. Language objectives support students in closing their gaps and giving them access and equity. Dual language researcher and author Dr. Jose Medina of Educational Solutions says, if we write a content objective without a language objective, it's like asking kids to find a target in the dark. Language objectives are the linguistics equity part of the lesson planning process. Teaching with language objectives should be common practice in U.S. schools in order to serve our multicultural, multilingual students. It's a simple yet very effective way to give multilingual students equitable access to grade level content. Thank you for watching.